Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Speak and Grow Rich podcast with Amanda Moxley. Today, I have Taylor Proctor. You are going to love her, y'all. She manifested an 8-figure opportunity, not a 5-figure, not a 10-figure. I mean, not a 10, but an 8-figure. And I love that you have the 8 already there. You were manifesting it long ago. So welcome. We met in person at a speaking engagement last week, and I had to have her on the podcast. You live here locally in Utah, as do I. And go ahead and introduce yourself. Welcome.
Well, thanks for having me, Amanda. We've known each other for a while now, but it was great to reconnect in person at that event. I am, as you already know, but I am a business coach, and I work with business owners to help them get good at business so they can get back to why they got into business in the first place, which is usually freedom, time, transformation, offering solutions, all of those things. And so I work with business owners to help them get their business in a great space using my proprietary method, which is called IMOVE. And IMOVE stands for intuition, marketing, operations, velocity, and execution. Thought being is that when we are aligned with our intuition, then we can take solid marketing action that is actually congruent for us in our business, then have operations that come into place to support our business, allowing us to apply the strategies to really give us more velocity and execute with ease as leaders. So that is what I do in a nutshell, and so excited to be here and share my story about manifesting an 8-figure opportunity.
I cannot wait. Well, and you have a background. You were in corporate for 15 years. Tell us a little bit about that, what you did in corporate.
I actually have a crazy, I think it's crazy. I have a crazy professional trajectory. So I actually started out as a on-air radio talent and traffic producer. So I started out in the radio world, and I actually worked a split shift. So, because it was traffic reporting, so for drive times. So I had a free 6 hours in the middle of the day, and I decided, you know what? I'm going to figure out what I want to do. And so I decided to go into business as a wedding planner. So I had an entrepreneurial adventure and went into wedding planning, did that for 2.5 years, and then moved to a different city. And in the wedding world, like, your vendor relationships and your local relationships are everything, even when you're bringing in destination weddings, because you have the florists that you work with, you have the photographers, all of that. And so when I moved to a new city, I went, do I really want to keep on doing this? And my favorite part of being in business for myself was actually marketing my business. So then I jumped full on into the corporate world of marketing, operations, leadership, and strategy. And so really spent a lot of time working in an agency setting, working in an in-house setting, and then working with clients like Google, Stanford University, Stanford Medicine, Johnson & Johnson, and several more. And in conjunction with that, I also had my own personal development journey and decided that I really wanted to help other people after I'd kind of gone through that journey a couple of years later, decided I can't be the only one who's going through that or had gone through that. And so I became a certified coach, and I started doing transformational happiness mentoring at the same time on the side of my corporate life. And my clients for happiness mentoring oftentimes were entrepreneurs, business owners. And by the time that we complete working with each other in a 10-week period, we had achieved all their goals, hit all the things, had found sustainability and being happier in their lives. And then they would say to me, well, I'm everything is so good. Now I just need to get, like, my business to those next levels. And I was like, I've got a whole secret life where in the corporate world, I'm literally taking departments that don't exist and growing them and building them from 0 team members to 30 team members, from 1 service to 5, from 1 language to 5, from 1 location to, I lived 6 weeks in Edinburgh, Scotland, setting up our international EMEA team. And so it was like the perfect congruence of, oh, wow, my clients that need this, that were here for like this life coaching and happiness mentoring, really could benefit from me sharing my corporate skills. And so what I offer now is really a blend of those two, helping business owners get good at business while also having the sustainability and tapping into their intuition to support them for, again, that sustainable and happy growth.
So cool. I love how you took your passions that you were working on yourself and just helped other people with it. which then deepened your understanding of it and helped
Oh,
more people. So
absolutely.
great. That's the cool thing about coaching. One of my mentors once said, we coach our stories. So yes, happiness. Are you happier now?
Oh, 1000%. Well, and I love
But
that I love that you say that too, because I have my own podcast, and for years I did it daily. And
oh
when I
wow.
was doing happiness mentoring, it was a daily podcast. And so every day I had to, with it wasn't interviews, so it was a solo show. And every day it was like, okay, how can I help people be happier? Well, I can't say do this if I'm not doing it too. And it's really hard to be like fake happy on a
Yeah.
podcast if you're showing up every single day. So like you've got to be eat, sleep, and breathing what you were teaching. And it
Cool.
really, at the end of the first year, I was like, if the whole goal of this was to help just one person be happier, and in that, I was that one person. I mean, I helped hundreds of people, but there was
Mhm.
also like, and I'm happier too, which was huge.
Right on. So you went from being unhappy to happy in a year.
Oh, yes. I actually, well, so I went from being the angriest person you've probably ever met. I was
Oh,
very, very angry. My husband had a phrase, hell hath no fury, like Taylor, mildly inconvenienced. Like,
it's that fire, that redhead fire in you.
totally. But I was so mad and angry at so many things.
Wow.
And I had to come to this conclusion of like, my whole life is going to fall apart if I keep on having this temper and this rage and like not
Wow.
understanding where it was coming from. And it really was a blanket for other emotions. And so
Mhm.
I really had to help cultivate my emotional intelligence. And the whole goal was I just want to be happier. And so I
Yes.
did all of that work and realized that, oh my gosh, yes, I have become happier. And then that is when I started my podcast. And then I got my coaching certification and was like, okay, how do we continue to apply not only what I've learned to be happier, but that I'm continuing to learn as I continue to focus and emphasize on being happier?
That's cool. I started my journey as a health coach and I transformed my body. So it's similar, like I transformed my body and then went to business coaching. So it's
I love
just,
that.
I love that journey that we're on. And it's like, oh, and a side benefit is I got better too. Right?
100%.
It's so great. Okay, cool. Well, let's get into this. So when I first heard manifest an 8-figure opportunity, that I'm like, I was like, well, okay, I've manifested some parking spots, some trips, some clients, some really cool things. My husband, I manifested a lot, but 8 figures. So break it down for us. Who wants, put it in the chat if you want to manifest 8 figures as well. All right. What do you want to hear? Let's do this. And we're going to do it. I think real quick, because it's a bigger number, it's almost like, well, why not? It's more playful than
Mhm.
something that we might think, oh, that's doable.
Definitely. Well, and it's
Cool.
interesting too, because like I've manifested, I would say some pretty big things. I, at one point in my life, owned 2 limited edition Porsches that
Mm-hmm.
like there's only 250 in the whole world, and I owned 2 at the same time and got them in the same week of each other. And so it was like, wow, I really manifested this that was on my wall saying I wanted a Porsche.
Yeah. And it's orange, right?
It
An
is orange.
orange.
Yes, it's in the
So
branding.
cool.
But so like personally, like I'll share the story, but I also at first was like, okay, like I actually had to count out on my fingers what actually is 8 figures, because we always hear 6 figures, sometimes we hear 7 figures. I'm like, well, what is 8 figures? So 8 figures is $10 million minimum, like that's the starting point.
Right.
And so what happened was is that I walk every day, and I pace every day is probably a better way to say it. I just go on my back porch and I just walk back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And so one day I was walking back and forth, and out of nowhere, this thought popped into my head: I can be an 8-figure entrepreneur. And at that point, I went, I don't even know what 8 figures is. Let's count that out.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, snap. Okay, so $10 million minimum, that's huge. And my brain started to really contemplate the how. Like, how are we
Mm-hmm.
going to do that? And my brain started going, okay. And I even pulled out my phone on my calculator on my phone and was like, all right, how many of this product would I have to sell? And how many of this and how many of this to become 8 figures? And it started to get like convoluted and complex and weighty. As I'm walking, when this just like burst inspiration and thought of being an 8-figure entrepreneur came into my head. So the very first thing that I had to do, and the very first thing I had to do was release and forego the expectations, because instantly this thought came in. I had to figure out what it actually meant. And then I was like, how do I do it? And I started putting all these expectations that 8 figures had to come from selling products. It had to come from selling X amount of products, and I would have to raise my prices. And I started adding all of these expectations to it, to the point, to what you said, it started to feel incredibly heavy.
So that'd be 400 people at 25,000.
Yeah.
That sounds like a lot for little, when you want to go fly, drive your Porsche and have fun. Like, she's like, that's a lot.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
And it's one of those where it's like, okay, at the time, I also had my lowest package wasn't 25,000. My lowest package was, I think, 1,500. And so it was like, man, if I had people come in at my lowest package and I did that one by one, can you imagine? So I started to put all these expectations of how in the world I could make 8 figures. And I think that's the important piece of this too, which is I instantly was like, I have to do the work to make this happen. And I put that expectation out there that I'm expecting I'm going to have to do all the hustle, all the grind, all the sales, all the marketing, somehow get 400 people at 25,000, right? Yes. Like, it added so much expectation to it. So I
so do that. I'm sorry to interrupt, but so many people do that. It's like me. It's so good. I love this point. Keep going.
And the thing is everybody does.
Yeah.
Like, it's human nature to go, we're all familiar with, what is it? The 5 W's and the how. So who, what, where, when, why, how. Well, what happens is what, and then we instantly go to how. And that is a blocker. But if you go, what is it? Why do I want it? Who does it impact? When will it happen? Where will it happen? And then figure out the how. It opens up so much more opportunities, so many more. But as humans, naturally, we're just like, what is it? Okay, how do I make it happen?
Right.
So had to forego that expectation of all the ways in my brain I was trying to think about the logical explanation of 8 figures.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, well, we're just going to play with this and figure out how, but not how, right? How can I sit with the idea of 8 figures versus how can I make 8 figures?
Right.
So
yes.
A couple of days went by and I'm still saying to myself, okay, I'm an 8-figure entrepreneur. I'm an 8-figure entrepreneur. And I decided that me as an audio learner, plus as I'm pacing, saying verbal affirmations or declarations just comes really naturally, because you're pacing, you're going to say the same thing over and over again. So I created a custom declaration. And that declaration is, I'm Taylor Proctor. I'm an intuitive business strategist and 8-figure entrepreneur. Simple, to the point. Who I am, what I do, the end result, or what I want, right? So I'm Taylor Proctor, intuitive business strategist, and an 8-figure entrepreneur. So I started saying that over and over and over and over and over again. Anytime that I was pacing, I would start saying that. And for anyone listening, that formula is easy for you to be able to figure out as well. And Amanda, I spoke about this, and you have one that you've been saying.
Well, I am Amanda Joanne Moxley, and I am an 8-figure business mentor and philanthropist.
So good. So good. So what happens is you start saying that. And if you believe in energetics and all those other things, like you start to make that happen in the universe. Additionally, if we want to look at the science component of it, your reticular activating system or center is your filter in your life. So your reticular activating center is like, hey, you're wearing clothes, but we're not going to sit there and have you feel the pressure of your sweater or your necklace. You just know it's there. We've got other things to focus on. So the fastest way to get through the reticular activating system is to see it, say it, hear it, and feel it. So as you are saying your declaration, you are saying it. If you have it written down, you can put it like on the side of your computer. You can put it on the dashboard of your car. You can put it on your phone background, right? Then you're seeing it. As you've been saying it, you're also hearing it. And then if you're like me, as I was pacing in my body, I also was feeling it.
Yes.
So it really helps it break through the system even faster. So energetically, we're working that way. And actually, scientifically, we're working that way by using our declarations to help support whatever the goal is. And in my case, it was I'm an 8-figure intuitive business strategist and 8-figure entrepreneur. So I start saying all that. And I had no expectation of timeline. That's an important thing, right? We forgoed all expectations. So I had no expectation of timeline. And I had an event come up 2 weeks after I had this, I'm going to say, lightning bolt to my brain, being an 8-figure entrepreneur. And I should also note, keep in mind, the most I've earned in my life is $250,000. Like in 1 year, I should say, not total. In 1 year, $250,000. So 8 figures, $10 million feels like a big, big jump.
Yes.
So I'm just foregoing the expectations. I'm doing a couple of other things. I'm saying my declaration, and an event comes up. This event was on a Saturday. It was at a location that's like 2 hours away from my house, and it was a 9 a.m. start. And I'm like, I do not.
No.
I do not want to get ready and go to this event and drive 2 hours up there, and just like everything was just like, ugh, I don't want to go.
Yeah. Resistance.
Total resistance, total opposition to what I needed to be. And if you're religious, you could say that's the adversary trying to keep you stuck and keeping you stuck and staying in your ways. So I was like, okay, I don't want to go, but I promised the person. Side note, this person who was hosting the event I'd been a guest on her podcast 3 years before. Okay. So talk about like fate and timing. 3 years before, and she'd always invited me to events on LinkedIn. And I was like, I'd always see them after the fact. And so I felt terrible that for 3 years, she's invited me to go to these events, and I've always missed them. So I had said I would be at this one. I caught it on time. And so then I'm there going, I don't want to go. And I'm like, don't be lazy, go. Like you need to go. So that's like my other tip here is opportunities are going to come up and you're going to desire just to be lazy on a Saturday morning. Don't take advantage of the opportunities that come to you. So I go to the event, and I meet this speaker, and that was like the highlight of the whole thing. Was she was speaking, it was great. So then there's a networking opportunity in the middle, like during a break. And she comes up to me and says, how come I don't know you? I'm like, I don't know. Right? I don't know why you don't know me. And it ends up being that she's like, look, I want to talk to you. I want to connect with you better, deeper. And like, literally, she's picked me out of a crowd. And she goes, I want to connect. I need to get to know you. Like, let's get each other's phone numbers and like find a way to connect. And I was like, okay, sure. And then, beep, the timer goes for the networking and everybody rotates through. All right. So she now has my number. Real quick.
So she had a strong intuition. Your statement was, I'm an intuitive business. So intuitively, she says, I need to know you. Okay.
Yes.
Keep going. I love this.
It's crazy. This story is the craziest story of my whole life. I will just say that.
I love it.
So turns out, so Monday morning, she sends me a text and is like, hey, this is me from the event. I would love to chat with you. Where do you live? And I'm like, oh, I live in Saratoga Springs. And she goes, oh my gosh, so do I. Turns out we live 7 minutes away from each other.
That's crazy. That is crazy.
So she's like, come down to my house and let's have a chat. I'm like, okay. Well, what she does is she has a international women's network and the world's only interactive TV network for women. Okay. And so I'm thinking in kind of a vain way, but I have a podcast. I speak well on camera. Like I can go and speak from stages. I'm thinking she's going to want to sell me into being on her network. Right. So I'm fully going into it being like, okay, yeah, she's going to try to sell me into being her network, blah, blah, blah. Sit down on her couch. And she's like, so tell me about yourself. So I tell her about my work experience. I tell her about my business. I tell her all these things. And she goes, oh, I need to hire you. I need you to be on my executive team. I'm like, okay.
And was it from your corporate background and all the
Yes.
experience you had there? Yeah. Or
Right.
the
Because
happiness part.
well, the personal development piece is huge in the sense, and the life coaching is huge in a sense of like, when you're growing a business, I personally believe that your ability to grow is capped by your business's ability to grow is capped by your ability to grow as a person. And we've all seen, like, there are people who make tons of money and you're like, they have not grown as a person at all.
Right.
Imagine, like, that's their cap. So can you imagine
Right.
how much more they would grow through personal development, and their business would grow as well?
And their
So
emotional mastery,
totally.
right? Going up that vibrational scale. Exactly. Okay. So
Well,
she
and being a
wanted the
leader.
combo. Hmm?
Yeah, and being a leader, like, you cannot be a leader if you are not, I mean, you cannot be a good leader, in my opinion, if you are not personally aware, and you are not aware of the needs and the mindsets of your team.
Right. True.
Yeah. So,
Yes.
and to be a member of the executive team, right, you've got to have that. So all the
Mhm.
corporate experience plus all of the emotional resilience and life coaching and things like that. She goes, so yes, I need you to be a member of my executive team. I'm like, okay. So I'm like, where are your gaps? Like, what do you need help with? And so she kind of walks through everything, and it's like, oh, that's your chief operations officer. She's like, awesome. Yeah, that's what I need you to do. So I was like, okay, that's fine. Let's take a look at this. Let's kind of feel it out and see if this is a good fit. And we can talk about that later, which is like the seagulls versus land type of thing.
Mhm.
But ultimately, it was a good fit. And so I said, yes. Well, in our negotiation, she was like, I'd love to give you a salary. You can still do your business, and I'll give you 1% equity in the company. Beautiful. Perfect. Sign on the dotted line, which is not 8 figures, by the way. Like, the salary and those pieces are just, that's what, cool. Like, that's awesome. And so she says, you get 1% equity. So we sign on the dotted line, have the contracts in place, everything's there. And she goes, okay, so one of the first things that we need to do is that I'm working with an M&A broker, which is mergers and acquisitions. And she's already on board. She believes that we can sell the company in 3 to 5 years for $1 billion or more. That is 1 billion with a B.
The billion.
Yes.
Oh,
So, and actually, the more we worked on it, it's probably going to be more like 1.5. But so I'm like, okay, awesome. I go home and I'm not even thinking about it. And suddenly it comes to me. I'm like, what is 1%, which is the equity ownership I have? What is 1% of $8 billion? So I pull out my trusty calculator. For those of you who are fast at math, you already hit this answer. For those of you that are like me, it is $10 million, which is 8 figures.
so cool.
So in a 2-week time frame, like, I was not expecting it to happen in 2 weeks, let alone
Right?
like
2 weeks.
Yeah. In 2 weeks of saying the declaration, foregoing expectation, doing a couple of other things, and then going to this event, meeting this person, taking the calls or the meetings, suddenly this opportunity was just dropped in my lap. And let's be honest, like, I didn't know her. This was
Right.
an event where actually the only person I knew at that event was the person that I was there for. Like,
Yes.
everybody else I had never met before. So it was a completely new
Wow.
environment, completely new circle of people. And I never would have had this opportunity happen if I hadn't been preparing for it in
Right.
all
With your declaration. Oh
exactly.
my gosh. Okay. We can all do this. 2
It's
weeks.
totally plausible. It's totally plausible and possible to anybody can do it.
Yes. So tell us about the land and the seagulls.
Yes. So I had a coach that, when we were talking about knowing if things are right for you, knowing if they're aligned, and she brought up the analogy of land and seagulls. So back in the day, and even now, I'm sure, but I don't think very many of us travel by boat extensively across the ocean, maybe on cruises. But back in the day, when people would travel across the ocean, they would be out at sea for weeks,
Weeks.
months, right? And when they would see seagulls or birds, they would be an indicator that land was nearby.
Yeah.
But seeing a seagull didn't mean that you'd reach land by sunset. Seeing a seagull meant you were 3 to 5 days out from land. And so the whole a seagull, aka, is it showing that you're in alignment, but it's not quite right? Or is it that you've actually landed and this is the thing to get you to achieve your goals, or that is aligned and congruent for you? And I use something called intuitive strengths, which is, there's actually over 60. That's a 60, and it's like a fingerprint. It's custom to every single person and the situation that they're in, what their top intuitive strength may be. But for my way of determining if this opportunity was a seagull or land, I used my top intuitive strength for business strategy, which is adventure. And so for me, I know that if I feel excited, like if I'm ready to put on the backpack, have it filled with my water and the cliff bars and all of those things, I'm ready to hike up that mountain, I am stoked for it. And it feels light and it feels like an adventure. I know that it is the right path for me. But if it feels like, oh, I've got to put on the backpack and to fill up the water and I'm going to be eating cliff bars and you know what I mean? Then I know that that's not aligned with my intuitive strength that's telling me that this is land or an indicator I'm on the right track, and a few more things need to fall into place. So that's seagulls and land. That's how I was able to figure out for me that this 8-figure opportunity with this international and interactive women's network was in fact land. And now I have 1% ownership in an incredible company that is well on track to be selling for $1 billion or more.
So what are you going to do with that? What's your plan? If you don't mind me asking.
Oh, I love
it. Did you think about that? Did you think like, well, what would I do with 10 million? And
so for me, I actually didn't think of like the after story, because 10 million was such a big amount that it was like the best I could do in terms of stories for myself was repeat that it was me and my identity, and forego any expectations of how it would happen. So in foregoing these expectations of how it would happen, I kind of naturally had to forego the expectations of how I would utilize it.
Yeah.
That being said, now that opportunity fell in my lap and we're well on track for it, $10 million is my baseline number. And it actually has been way before that thought even came to me, is my baseline number to semi-retire, which for my husband and I is that we moved to Costa Rica, where the cost of living is like super inexpensive. So $10 million will go really far. And work from home. There, I am in Mountain Standard Time. You're in Mountain Time. Costa Rica is actually in Mountain Time. So I wouldn't have any time zone changes or anything like that. Just move to a warmer location, modern house, and work on my business, and do, instead of going to things in person, doing it all remotely or traveling back and forth. And that's a huge component of it. And then also using those funds to boost my business even further, to get it out through PR campaigns. Again, now you got marketing side coming in, but I'm like boosting it through PR, more speaking opportunities, things like that, to be able to help as many business owners as possible. And then 5% of my earnings in my business, or of my profit in my business, I should say, being donated to charities and a cause that I believe in, which I'd be happy to talk about. But I will talk all day about that cause. So, but really it's
what is it?
It's boosting my business, donating to the charity.
What's the charity? We need to know.
Yes. So there's a company here in Utah called Nuzzles & Co. They have a kind of secret, I'm not going to say organization, but it kind of is. They have a secret organization within Nuzzles & Co. And the reason it's secret is because it kind of has to be to support the mission of this division. And what it is it's called Purple Paw. And Purple Paw is dedicated to helping survivors of domestic abuse be able to leave the situation. And how they do that is, I'm going to tear up talking about it. How they do that is that most abusers, by the time that they're abusing their families, right? They have already injured or have threatened to or have killed the family animal. And they use that as a control technique.
Oh my gosh.
To keep the human family members in line. And so they will often threaten, and I believe the number is astronomical. I think it's like 76% of domestic abuse cases, the animal has been threatened or has already been injured by the abuser. And so when these women and children are trying to leave these abuse situations, the animal is often used as leverage from the abuser. Well, the reason that they can do that is because that shelters that take in battered women and children to help them recover and be able to get back on their feet and away from the abuser don't accept animals. So I apologize. I cry every time I talk about this.
Yeah.
So the purple paw, what they do is that they offer a foster environment for these animals to be able to also go through recovery and get out of the abuse situation. And when the family is back on their feet and away from the abuse, the animal and the family can reconnect, and they're both off to better starts. And they don't take just dogs and cats, like they take horses and goats and snakes and gerbils and like any animal that is an animal and a member of the family that can't come with them to the shelter. Purple Paw supports them being able to get out of those situations and reunite as a family.
That is beautiful. So thank you for sharing.
It's a massive need and so important, but they can't really talk about it because then the abusers will try to find the foster system and try to take the animals that way. And so it's kind of the secret thing that they do on the side. But it is such an amazing program and so helpful and so needed. And so that's where I donate. That's where I donate my time, my 5% of my profits. All of that goes to Purple Paw. But I mean, there's plenty of other amazing charities, but that's my charity of choice.
Thank you for sharing. I never heard about it. My dog's sitting here right now. I can't even imagine. That's so great that you're helping them, fostering and just taking care. I love it. Okay, so I know you have a free resource where we can learn more about these crazy action steps that you took to create this 8 figures. So would you mind sharing that link with us?
Yeah.
Or I have it too.
I mentioned 4 things that I did, right? So we forgoed the expectations. We did the custom declaration, showed up, right? Wasn't lazy, and then used my intuitive strengths. So there are actually 4 more things that I did. And so I have a free resource for you, for your listeners, of the other things, totaling 8 crazy actions that I took to generate an 8-figure opportunity. And it's a completely free resource. It's actually a video email series. So if you sign up, you're getting an email a day for 8 days with a video of me talking about what I did. And I think the longest video is like 7 minutes. All the rest of them are short and to the point, and to help you manifest your own 8-figure or better opportunities. So that link is go.taylorproctor.com/8-crazy-actions2. But also I've put that in the chat, and Amanda, you have access to it. So it should just be a quick link away.
Easy. Easy. Well, thank you so much for sharing your light. You guys, be sure to follow Taylor. I'm so grateful that you are here, and let's all go manifest. Put in the chat in the comments if you're, come back to this and share your wins, share your seagull cell, share your land in this episode. I cannot wait. Let's do this. All right. Congrats, Taylor. I know the best is yet to come, and thank you for blessing us. And I'll see you all in the next video. Bye for now.